What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be posting my updated hero Shaddoll list. There's been some major changes into the combos that you can do with this deck. The ceiling of this deck honestly kind of got a lot higher because there's a lot better cards that we can go into now. With some of the newer cards that came out, I'm sure that people are kind of sick of seeing some of these cards that are in this deck. However, they do really make the Shaddoll deck much better than they used to. We also just got a brand new card in Rise of the Duelist, which honestly really makes this deck much better as well. That card is honestly kind of crazy, and we'll talk about it a little more when it comes up. But jumping right into it, we have 3 copies of Shaddoll Wendy, 3 copies of Shaddoll Squamata, 2 copies of Hedgehog, 2 copies of Beast, 1 copy of Falco, and 1 copy of Shaddoll Ariel. So to start off, Wendy's a really fantastic card. This card came out in the structure deck, really raised the ceiling of our deck. It coupled with Ariel and Shaddoll Incarnation allowed us to do a lot of really cool plays with Cross Sheep, which allowed us to bring back fusions, cycle cards a lot better, and honestly this boosts the overall consistency of this deck a lot. Even in hands where you break, like setting a Shaddoll Wendy, and then if your opponent doesn't like clear it by Unicorn shuffling it away or popping it while it's set, actually if they pop it while it's set it's fine because then it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, but it'll trigger effect to float into another card, allow you to play the game for longer. A lot of the times you can like special summon a beast from your deck during your opponent's turn, and they can either weigh the options of killing it or being forced to shuffle it back, because when Beast flips it'll gain you a ton of advantage by drawing 2, discard 1, and if they leave it alone, you know, it's a 2200 body that can be actually pretty threatening. The Squamata, we're playing 3 of it because we want to consistently open our combos, and Squamata is basically just additional copies of all the other Shaddoll cards in your deck that you want to see, like Hedgehog or Wendy. So basically this serves as the like 5th, 6th, or 4th through 6th copy of Wendy, and like 3rd, 4th, 5th copy of Hedgehog. You basically want to see it like every hand because it gives you the most flexibility. And then 2 Hedgehog, this card is pretty integral. It's also one of our Shaddolls that gains us advantage, which is really solid. And then 2 Beast, because another Shaddoll that gains us an advantage. Also, this, like, it's just kind of necessary. You need to keep your Shaddoll count relatively high so that even in like the hands where you don't open well, you can still make a fusion summon play and not go completely neg on it. And then our 2 1-ofs, which basically are like the combo enablers of our deck. If you draw them, it's not too bad in most cases. Drawing Falco is actually really not that bad because most of the time it means that you can search something else off of your Hedgehog. And Ariel's kind of bad to draw, but there's ways to get around it. Like you can just set it, flip it, and then use its effect that way. So I definitely wouldn't want to really play 2 of that card. And that's it for our Shaddoll lineup. And then the other titular part of this deck, we have our hero package, which is 3 copies of Vision Hero Vion, 1 copy of Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, and 1 copy of Elemental Hero Honesty Neos, and these are kind of part of it as well, so I'll pull them out now, and 2 copies of Polymerization. This engine honestly is really crazy, especially for a more budget-oriented build. This allows you to raise the ceiling of your deck by so much. It allows you to lower the amount of cards that you need to combo off in the first place. As many of you, if you've played Shaddolls in the past, you know that you need typically 3 cards to combo off because it's a fusion summon, right? You need your fusion card plus the 2 cards that you're fusing away. And in Shaddolls, normally you go plus off your fusion summons because all of your cards have really strong effects. However, still having to have 3 cards is really rough. So this lowering the amount of cards that we have to see is really strong. And basically how it works is that you normal summon your Vion, Vion dumps your Shadow Mist, Shadow Mist adds a Honest Neos from your deck to your hand, and then Shadow Mist vanishes, or your Vion vanishes your Shadow Mist to add your copy of Polymerization. So just like that, you basically have a monster on board, plus a fusion card, or a Polymerization, plus a light to fuse into a construct with, which is really strong. So that's it for the hero package. And then the last monsters in the deck are Plague Spreader Zombie, and 1 copy of Dark Magician, and 1 copy of Red Eyes Be Dragon. I'm sure just with these 3 cards you can tell where this is going. This is basically our 1 Needle Fiber target that we play in the deck. The ability to tuck cards like Red Eyes Fusion back into the deck, or Shaddoll Wendy, or not Shaddoll Wendy. What's her name? Shaddoll Ariel. Shaddoll Ariel is really solid, so I like this card a lot. Also, like just having it as an extra extender sometimes post fact is really solid. If you get like stopped by hand traps or something. And then these two cards, you have to play them because, you know, we're playing our boy Dragoons in the extra deck. And then last cards in the deck, just Gammas. Gamma package. They're light monsters. They hard stop. When you activate Shaddoll Fusion, when you go second, your opponent is very, very likely to like ash it or like activate a monster negate that they have on the field to stop it. And then you just Gamma them, and it's like, it's kind of GG because you get to fully resolve your Shaddoll Fusion for whatever you want, plus you get material for an instant Needle Fiber on the board, which is pretty crazy. And then going into our fusion spells, we have 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion, 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion, and 2 copies of Polymerization. So basically, you want to open Shaddoll cards. You want to open Shaddoll Fusions when you're going first, or when you're going second. If you don't see a fusion card, you can't play the game. Which is why playing maxed out counts of L's and regular Shaddoll Fusions is good, and then 2 copies of Poly because it's solid to draw on its own, and you just need to keep your fusion count high overall, so that's why we're playing them. L is a lot weaker in this deck now that we've gotten Schism. Schism is basically our main playmaker now. L is more like, you know, a recurable quick play fusion card, so it's still really good. It's just not as good as or not as crucial as it used to be. And then regular Shaddoll Fusion is nuts, as you know. If your opponent controls an extra deck monster, you get to basically fusion summon from your deck. And then the last 3 spells in the deck, we have our 1 Red Eyes Fusion for our Dragoons. We have our Rhoda Reinforcements of the Army to search out our Elemental Hero Vion. It allows us to bring up our copies of Vion to 4, and basically our virtual amount of fusion cards from 8 to 12, because Vion will search out the Poly. So we basically have 12 copies of Polymerization in our deck, so we can get to it relatively consistently as we need to. And then the Emergency Teleport, because it kind of gets double duty in this deck. 1, it increases the amount of Wendy's that we have in our deck, which means that our combos can be a little bit more consistent. If we just need another Shaddoll monster, or if we need like the flip monster to make Construct, that's really good. Also, it serves to summon Gamma, which is a light monster if we need the light, or a tuner monster if we need the tuner for Needle Fiber. So this card is really good, as well as just a really solid extender, which Shaddoll can kind of lack. If you see multiple fusion cards, you can extend, but if you don't, then E-Telly is a really solid extender in that way. I wanted to make room for Poly, but the deck space was already tight. Ultimately, I ended up cutting my 1 copy of Dragon in the main deck for this Emergency Teleport. Which I think is the right call, because this does way more, and I honestly think it allows you to do much more than just seeing the dragon, because like hands where you open dragon going first is kind of bad, but I would definitely side it if you played against more back row heavy decks. That card comes up. And then for our trap cards, 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. If you are playing a budget version of this deck, and that's why you wanted to play this deck, you can totally cut these. This can be like Ghost Ogre, because that's a light monster that gets another additional utility off of our Emergency Teleport. You could play Effect Failure as well. As in one of the combos I showcased, if you open a Squamata, or a Hedgehog with Fusion Spell plus a Light Monster, you can basically do like your full standard combo, like a very more non-specific hand. So if you want to increase your light count, you can. I just think Impermanence right now is really solid. The problem with like Effect Veiler is that during your turn it's dead, so you have to use it for fusion, whereas like if I draw Infinite Impermanence off the rip, I can turn off like a negate effect, and also going first, like I can use multiples of these, where Ghost Ogre, you can't use multiple of them in a turn. So overall, since I had them, I opted to play them. And then the last 2 traps, 1 Race Shaddoll Incarnation and 1 Shaddoll Schism. This card came out in the structure deck too. Really good for triggering your aerial. That's basically all that it does. If you draw it, it's not bad either, because you can easily get it into the graveyard with like effects like App Cologne, or you can just set it and like it gains you advantage back, which is really solid. And then on the next turn, you can use it to flip cards up early. And then like the biggest MVP of this deck now, Shaddoll Schism. This card is actually kind of insane. They gave Shaddoll's a Miracle Fusion trap that says once you Miracle Fusion out a card on the board that has the same attribute as the card you just summoned, which is kind of crazy. You know, light, there's a decent amount of lights, but like there's a lot of darks in the game right now that Schism basically just auto outs for free, which is really cool. Like the sending effect, there's a few things that it hits, but mostly just having this be a guaranteed fusion summon every single turn is nuts. Because like on your opponent's turn, you get to make like a Winda, and then after that on your turn you can make like a construct, and then at that point the Schism's basically gone like +3 for you, and it like completely stops your opponent, which is really strong. Alright, moving on to the extra deck, we have 3 copies of Shaddoll Construct. While playtesting a bit, the third one came up, so I opted to play it. I mean, if you wanted to play other cards in the extra deck, I could see cutting this down to 2. But I liked it. I've liked it at 3. 2 Winda, I think you have to play 2. There's a lot of hands where you have to make Winda first, and then also want to be able to make Winda with Schism on your opponent's turn. So playing this card at 2 is really good. These are like your main Shaddoll monsters, and then our last Shaddoll monster is Shaddoll App Cologne. This being a 6 is super cool. Is a cool coincidence because it just allows you to randomly make Boral Savage Dragon sometimes, which is really cool. One of the combos actually does that. But yeah, overall these are all like really strong Shaddoll monsters. App Cologne I think is the weakest one because it takes effort to make this gain advantage, but it is also a good interruption. Where if you summon this off of Schism, negating a card on the field is pretty solid, and then also sending it to search whatever you need for the next turn is pretty good. But most of the time you want to go into Winda, and then most of the time when you're trying to be aggressive you want to go into Construct, or if you're making plays you go into Construct. And then the last cards to go with our like fusion package, we have 1 copy of Cross Sheet, which is basically a huge play enabler, and 1 copy of Shaddoll Construct, which is really good about triggering all of your Shaddoll effects, and also getting additional fusion summons every turn, which is really solid. It's also a Link 2, which is not relevant in this version of the deck because I'm not playing any Link 4s or higher, but if you wanted to make space, cut out Construct or something for an access code talker, you can summon back Construct, and then you only need 2 more monsters to ladder up into that access code, which I think is really solid. So that's it for the fusion support part of this extra deck. And then next we have our Needle Fiber package, which is our 1 Link Cross, 1 Crystron Halqifibrax, 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, 1 Herald of the Arclight, and 1 Martial Metal Marcher. Most of the time, this card is a little bit harder to get into. There's some like odd numbers that you can go through, like 1, 3, 4 gets you into the Boral Savage, like 1 from a token, 3 from the Martial Metal, and like 4 from a Shaddoll monster. So it comes up randomly like that. Most of the time you're just going to go into the Herald of the Arclight, however, because having like a soft macro Cosmos plus a hard negate is really strong. I like Boral Savage because it allows you to kill your opponent a lot easier. One of the biggest problems with Schism is that the monster that you summon off of Schism can't attack directly permanently. Yeah, it doesn't say until like the end of the turn or anything. So all the Windas and constructs that you summon off of your Schism can only really be used to clear monsters. But that's fine. So that's why like Boral Savage is really good, because it helps you push for big damage. I don't think I need to talk too more about these. Like, this engine's pretty nuts. And then the last 2 cards in the deck are 1 Dragoons, and then this is not a Lambda, this is a Predaplant Verte Anaconda. I'll add a picture here. This engine's kind of stupid, honestly. Like, the fact that you just get to throw a fat 3k undestructible, can pop 2 cards a turn, deal burn damage card into your deck just for free. Like, I basically just get to turn like the chaff monsters that Shaddoll produced anyways into like a really difficult to out negate, and then pair it really easily with like a construct plus another negate off of like most hands. Is pretty insane. Or not construct, a Winda plus a couple negates is pretty insane. It's just very, very difficult card to clear. Very solid. People have it gunning for this card right now. But honestly, like, even if your opponent's playing outs to it, like Kaijus or Forbidden Droplets or something like that, like it's just nuts. Honestly, it's just really nuts. And it raises the ceiling on what you can do with your deck, and it gives you a lot more offensive power on the clapback, because this card is just massive, and it's going to deal some kind of burn damage, making it easier for your opponent, or for you to kill your opponent. And overall, that's it for this deck. I've been play testing a little bit with it a lot. It's been honestly really fun. I put off this for a while because I wanted to make a deck list that I actually liked. Yeah, and this is, I think, a good version of the deck going forward. Like, especially if you already have like the needle fiber package, and you already have like the dragoons, because those can be played in basically any deck right now. But you didn't want to go and invest cards into or invest money into the Dogmatika engine. I know I certainly didn't. I'm waiting for that engine to cool off a little more before I pick it back up, because it's I don't know, something like $250 to pick up the whole engine right now. I thought that was a little ridiculous, since I'm not even really getting to play in person all that much right now. But that's basically it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If there's any other ways that you've been playing Shaddolls that you've really been enjoying, type them out. We'll have a conversation down there. And if you have any questions about this deck or any of the combos, you can ask down there. And this has been Underclocked here. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you next time.